Hey everyone, if you've seen my last video, then you already know that this one is going to be a bit more personal. From now on, I'm going to be making videos like these if I feel the need to talk about something, and today's topic is OCD. Specifically, harm OCD, which is something I've been struggling with for many years, but only recently started understanding more about it. So, a bit of background. Before I started struggling with harm OCD specifically, I had a lot of anxiety surrounding death and people close to me dying or something horrible happening to them. And I became very depressed because of this. It affected my sleep, my appetite. I was constantly on edge wondering if or when something would happen, until eventually it did happen. I experienced a lot of deaths in succession, and to me at the time, it felt like people around me were just dying left and right. People in my family, pets, even one of my friends in middle school, which I don't even know if I properly processed that. And it turned into this obsession surrounding death, and over time, this evolved into thoughts that were pretty out there, like, what if me thinking about it this much is what caused it? Another layer to this is berating myself for having these thoughts, because it sounds pretty self-centered. Like, why would my thoughts influence the events around me? That makes no sense. That sounds pretty self-centered. And then I would go into spirals of berating myself for thinking that things revolve around my thoughts. Even at the time, I knew that that wasn't possible, but it was still an intrusive thought that I was having. And so the more logical version of this became, what if I secretly wanted to hurt others, and that's why I was thinking about it so much? This escalates to the thoughts being about extremely taboo topics, just really horrible things that usually makes me feel like I have a pit in my stomach. And especially with everything going on in the news at the moment, it's gotten a lot worse. I spent years believing that it was true, that I was a horrible person deep down, that I didn't deserve to be part of society, and I completely isolated myself from my peers. And unfortunately, in my environment, whenever I tried to seek help or explain what was happening, a lot of people dismissed what I was going through, or just didn't understand, and so it was overlooked. And I never understood what I was dealing with. I never understood what was going on. I thought there was just something wrong with me, and that I was right, that I had to isolate myself, and that I should stop interacting with other people if I'm just going to end up hurting them. Like, I was convinced. I was so fixated on these thoughts that I ended up having recurring nightmares of it actually happening. So every day when I went to school, I was extremely disturbed to see the contrast, that everything was normal, life was going on as usual, and I would just look at the people in my class and think to myself, like, I wonder how people would react if they knew what was going on. And I started developing this sort of imposter syndrome, that I had to hide these thoughts, that I had to compensate in some way, because I thought that the thoughts were the real me, and that everything else, anything positive, whenever I would try to be nice to other people, connect with other people, I became convinced that that was just a way for me to compensate for what was truly going on underneath. And it came to a point where it was just exhausting dealing with all of this anxiety, and it just over time I just became more and more depressed and more isolated and alienated from my environment, and even from my family, just everyone. I just couldn't take it anymore, and I broke down completely, and I was hospitalized because I was convinced that I didn't deserve to keep going, that if this was how things were gonna be, that it would just be better to put an end to it. I might make a separate video about my experience in a psych ward. Maybe not. We'll have to see. Eventually, things sort of calmed down, but recently it's been flaring back up with everything that's been happening, and some interpersonal conflict that just really brought it back to the surface. and it's been rough dealing with it. And the reason why I'm making this video is because, for the simple reason that talking about it really helps. Talking about it makes me feel better. It doesn't make me feel like I have some deep dark secret that I have to hide inside, which is completely untrue and part of the intrusive thoughts. And that's also why I made this artwork. I wanted to capture how exhausting and disorienting and overwhelming it is to deal with something like this, you know, as a way to externalize it a little bit. But because of the recent flare-ups with the rumination spirals and the anxiety and constantly having to do mental checks just to prove to myself that I'm not a dangerous person, it eventually triggered a manic episode. And I will definitely be making a video about that, going into the details of what happened there, so stay tuned for that, I guess. But yeah, it's really not fun. It's not fun at all, but I wanted to talk about this because I feel like this subject is still quite misunderstood, and just to try to break the cycle, I feel like being an active participant in understanding this condition lessens the power that it has over me. So, externalizing it in the form of self-expression and through art, and educating myself about it, recognizing my own experience, and turning it into something concrete and maybe educational, hopefully helpful to someone else, is something that helps me have a little bit more agency, and I feel like it has less power over me the more open I am about it, because when the thought spiral hits, I'm just completely convinced that it's true, and I just shut down and isolate myself. And I'm tired of doing that. I'm tired of wasting opportunities and passing up the chance of making connections with people because of this disorder. I'm mostly just annoyed of having to deal with this, because I'm at a place now where I know that the thoughts don't mean anything about my identity and my sense of self, but I still get the physical reaction of the panic attacks when the wave hits, and I'm just annoyed that I have to deal with this still. Even with medication, it still happens sometimes. It still takes a lot of energy. It's really exhausting to deal with and have to de-escalate every time that it happens. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about that. That's my experience with OCD, and yeah. If you watched this whole video, thanks for being here, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye!